Imagine this. The night is vast and silent. Stars scatter across the velvet sky like whispers frozen in light. You are lying back, your chest rising and falling with each slow breath, and for a moment you feel as if the universe itself is leaning close to speak to you. The sound is not loud, not thunderous, not even clear. It is the hush of leaves trembling in the evening wind, the hush of waves folding themselves back into the sea, the hush of your own thoughts, gently asking, what is real? It feels like a question you have carried all your life, though you may never have spoken it out loud. Tonight, beneath the unblinking watch of the stars, it is here again, quiet yet insistent. What is reality? Is the ground beneath you solid? Are the stars above you fixed? Or are these only illusions, delicate threads of something deeper, stranger, softer than anything we could imagine? If this thought has found you here, then perhaps it is not an accident. You have stepped into the whispering cosmos, a place where wonder rests beside science, where curiosity folds itself into comfort. If you find solace in this slow unraveling of the universe, then I gently invite you to stay. Subscribe, and let us drift together into questions that few dare to ask, but all quietly feel. So close your eyes if you wish, or keep them open to the shadows and the stars. Let us walk softly into the heart of quantum physics, not as mathematicians or scientists with chalk-stained hands, but as dreamers, as listeners, as fragile beings who want to know what lies beneath the skin of reality itself. Quantum physics does not roar like thunder. It whispers. It does not crush mountains or split seas. It trembles at the smallest edge of being. Imagine, if you can, a world so small it hides inside the very particles of dust floating through the sunlight. Imagine worlds smaller than atoms, smaller than anything you can hold, smaller than even thought itself can properly grasp. And yet, it is there, shaping everything. A grain of sand on the shore, the curve of your palm, the light from a star 100 million years old of it exists because of this strange, quiet undercurrent called the quantum world. We often believe reality is strong. We press our feet against the earth, and we trust it will hold us. But quantum physics whispers, no, the ground beneath you is not solid. It is a storm of probabilities, endlessly changing, endlessly uncertain. And so here is the first claim, the first truth in this journey. Reality is not what it seems. Have you ever stared at the ocean waves? They roll in, one after another, endless, shimmering, impossible to pin down. Try to hold one wave in your hand, and it vanishes, leaving only the trace of salt on your skin. This is how reality behaves at its smallest scale. It is not a thing you can grasp, but a shimmering possibility like waves that might crash or might fade, depending on whether you choose to look. This is the great strangeness of quantum physics. Particles, the very building blocks of the universe, do not commit to being real until they are observed. A photon of light is not here, not there, not solid, not a single path. It is 1,000 possibilities, a shimmering field of maybe. Only when you look, when you observe, does it settle and say, I am here. Think about that. A thing exists only when it is noticed. Doesn't that sound strangely familiar? Haven't you, too, felt invisible until someone finally saw you? Haven't you, too, felt like a wave of possibilities, waiting for a moment when life would decide what you were meant to be. It is as if the smallest parts of the universe carry within them the same vulnerability as the human heart, uncertain, fragile, waiting to be seen. And so a question lingers, hanging in the dark like a lantern swaying on a distant ship. If reality itself needs an observer, then who or what is observing it all? Is the universe watching itself through us? Are we the dreamers, or are we the dream? If a particle is only real when noticed, then perhaps we, too, are only real when remembered, when loved, when held in another's gaze. This is not the loud science of textbooks and chalkboards. This is the soft science of whispers and shadows. The science that moves through your chest when you realize you are both small and infinite. For tonight, we will walk slowly, with patience, through these mysteries. We will see how light bends, how time slips, how distance vanishes into nothing. And with each step, we may find that the universe is less about answers and more about questions. Questions that comfort us, questions that disturb us, questions that pull us closer to the truth. The night deepens. The stars seem brighter now, though perhaps they are not brighter at all. Perhaps only your seeing of them has sharpened. The whisper continues, steady, as though the cosmos has been waiting all along for you to lean closer. Quantum physics begins not with certainty, but with a wound, with a doubt, with a trembling in the fabric of reality. Scientists once thought the world was firm, predictable, obedient. Then they peered deeper, and the ground gave way. And they found themselves falling into a sea where nothing could be predicted, only guessed. And so they asked, if the universe cannot be certain, then what can we ever truly know? This is where our story begins, with a question that refuses to be answered, and a universe that refuses to be simple. Close your eyes now, if you haven't already. Picture the stars not as dots, but as questions, thousands, millions of them. Imagine they are speaking not with sound, but with silence. They are not telling you answers. They are inviting you to wonder. The cosmos is whispering, and tonight you have chosen to listen. But whispers can also be unsettling. They can hide truths we are not ready to hear. Because if reality trembles at the smallest level, if particles wait for us to look before they choose to exist, then the next question follows like a shadow, like a step you cannot avoid. If the universe needs an observer, then what happens when no one is looking? Imagine a candle burning in the dark. Its flame flickers, golden and restless, spilling both light and warmth. Is it a wave of energy? Is it a trembling particle of fire? Or is it both, whispering to truths at once, refusing to be one thing alone? This is the secret of the quantum world, an invisible dance, where particles are never one, never fixed, never certain. They sway between possibilities, like dancers changing partners in a hall where music is too soft to hear. A photon of light, the smallest beat of existence, is not a single thing. It is both a wave and a particle, a rhythm and a step, a whisper and a shout, all at once. And here, the story becomes stranger, because the moment we look, the moment we ask, the universe seems to answer, but not in the way we expect. A wave becomes a particle, a rhythm becomes a step. The candle flame that was once both light and warmth is forced to choose, to declare itself, as if our very gaze pins it down. But before we look, before we dare to ask, it is both, always both, Think of a child running along the shore, chasing the reflection of the moon on water. The reflection is there, a silver path stretching endlessly across the sea. Yet, when the child runs closer, the path vanishes, receding, slipping away as though it was never there. This is the nature of particles. From a distance, they are waves of possibility, shimmering and endless. But approach them, look too closely, and they shrink, collapse, declare themselves as something else entirely. The universe, it seems, loves to play hide, dash, and dash seek. This strange dance is not confined to light or fire. It is stitched into the fabric of you. The atoms in your skin, the particles in your breath, the electrons pulsing in your nerves, they, too, are dancers. They, too, are both wave and particle. You are not a fixed being, not a single unshakable thing, but a shimmering field of possibilities held together by a mystery older than stars. And yet, if you are both, then what are you really? Are you the wave, the endless possibility, the dream not yet lived? Or are you the particle, the choice that has already been made, the story already written? The answer is both. Always both. It is here that curiosity becomes uneasy. Because if reality can wear two faces at once, then what else might be hidden beneath its mask? If light itself cannot decide what it is until we force it to, then perhaps everything we believe to be certain is trembling. Underneath the floor, beneath your feet, the heartbeat in your chest, the choices you think you have already made. What if all of it is swaying, uncertain, waiting? And yet there is a deeper wound, a more haunting question. If the universe refuses to commit to one truth until we look, then what does that say about us, the ones who are looking? When you walk into a room full of strangers, do you not shift, bend, change depending on who watches you? When you feel unseen, do you not dissolve, become less certain of who you are? And when a gaze rests upon you, soft, heavy, unavoidable, do you not suddenly feel real in a way you did not before? The quantum world is not separate from us. Its trembling mirrors our trembling. Its indecision mirrors our indecision. The universe may not commit to being a wave or a particle until it is observed, just as we may not commit to who we are until someone finally sees us. And this raises a shadow of a thought. What if our very existence is also an invisible dance? Let us step closer into this mystery. Imagine two curtains swaying in an open window. One is heavy and dark, the other light and translucent. Both move with the same wind, yet one hides. This is how the quantum world moves. Veils of truth, some opaque, some translucent, fluttering, never still. Scientists once tried to tear back the veil, to demand, "Tell us what you are." But the particles would not obey. Instead, they laughed. If particles can laugh, and showed both answers at once. They passed through two doors at the same time. They stood in two places at once. They were contradictions made flesh, paradoxes wearing crowns. The deeper the scientists looked, the stranger it became. Every experiment whispered the same haunting refrain. Reality does not like to be pinned down. Reality prefers to dance. And so here we stand, at the edge of the curtain, at the edge of certainty. You, the listener, the dreamer, the observer, are caught in the middle of this invisible ballet. The question that trembles is not only scientific, but personal. If particles can live in two states at once, why can't we? If light itself refuses to be only one thing, then why do we insist on reducing ourselves to only one story, one truth, one life? Perhaps you are not one version of yourself, but many. Perhaps you are not a single, fixed path, but 1,000 paths shimmering around you. Perhaps you are more infinite than you dare believe. But wait, something stirs in the silence. A darker, heavier question. If a particle can exist in many states until it is observed, then who decides which version becomes real? Who or what forces the wave to collapse into the particle, the dream into the truth? Is it Usta observers, the lookers, the seekers? Or is it something greater, watching from behind the veil? This is the question that has haunted scientists and philosophers alike. It is the wound that does not heal, the whisper that never stops. If the universe is a dance, then who is playing the music? The candle flickers again. The child still chases the moon's reflection. The veils in the window rise and fall, and somewhere in the shadows, the next secret waits, because if the act of watching can change reality itself, then what happens when reality watches back? The room is quiet. A single curtain sways before an open window, thin as breath, trembling in the night air. Beyond it lies the world, streetlights glowing faintly, shadows leaning against walls, the faint echo of footsteps fading down an empty road. You lift your hand to touch the curtain. It shivers beneath your fingers, as though it knows you are there. As though the simple act of being seen changes its nature. And perhaps it does. This is the great secret hidden in the fabric of reality. The act of watching alters the thing that is being watched. At the quantum level, observation is not passive. It is a force, a hand, a sculptor. Before we look, a particle is a ghost of possibilities, a wave stretched wide across the universe. But the moment we watch, it collapses into one thing, one truth, one fragile certainty. The curtain is drawn back. The wave becomes the particle. The dream becomes the moment. It is as though reality is waiting for our gaze to decide what it will be. Think about this: a seed beneath the soil, hidden, invisible, until someone bends down, brushes the dirt away, waters it, waits for it. Suddenly, it grows. Observation breathes life into it. The same is true for us. A story unread, a song unheard, a life unseen. Does it fully exist, or is it only half alive, waiting for an audience? Quantum physics whispers, nothing becomes real until it is observed. And that is not just a scientific mystery. It is an emotional one. Because who among us has not felt the sting of invisibility? Who among us has not wondered if we are only real when someone else chooses to see us? Perhaps, at the smallest level, we are not so different from particles after all. But here is where the mystery deepens, where suspense grows heavy in the air. If reality only crystallizes when observed, then what of the moments when no one is looking? Picture an empty forest at night. The trees sway. The owls stir. A stream winds its silver path beneath the moon. No human eyes are there to see it. Does the forest still exist as solid, certain, unshakable? Or is it only a trembling wave, waiting for the gaze that will pin it into reality? This is not a game of words. It is an unsettling possibility. The forest may not be as fixed as we believe. The house behind you, the street outside, the stars above, they may all exist in a shimmer of potential until noticed. If this is true, then reality itself is fragile, like glass trembling in the wind. And yet, there is something even stranger. When you stare into the universe, when you look at it closely enough, the universe seems to respond. It is as if the curtain pulls itself tighter, the forest straightens its trees, the shadows adjust their stance. You are not only observing, it is as though the universe notices you're noticing. This is the heart of the mystery. The gaze does not move in one direction. It moves in two. When you watch the world watches you back. Think of standing on a stage. The lights blind you. The audience is silent. Yet you feel them hundreds of eyes, unseen, holding you in place. You shift. You breathe differently. You become a version of yourself, shaped by their gaze. In that moment, you are not who you were before. You are someone else, someone altered, someone created by being seen. Particles behave in the same way. When observed, they change, as though performing for the watcher. Without us, they remain uncertain, unresolved, incomplete. With us, they decide, collapse, take form. The curtain is not just cloth. It is alive. It trembles because you are there. But this opens the door to a question as sharp as glass. If reality changes when we look at it, then is reality ever truly real? Or is it only ever a reflection of the act of watching? What if everything you believe to be true, the floor beneath you, the breath in your lungs, the stars in the sky is only a response, only a mask, only a performance for your gaze? And if so, what lies behind the mask? What waits behind the curtain when no one is there to pull it aside? The suspense grows heavier. Imagine the universe as a vast theater. Every star a stage light, every atom a performer. We, the observers, sit in the seats, watching, and the play unfolds. But when the theater is empty, when no one is there to see, what happens then? Does the play continue without us? Or does the stage go dark, the actors dissolve, the story fold back into silence? This is the shadow that quantum physics casts. Reality may not exist independently of our gaze. We may not be bystanders in the universe. We may be participants, co-creators, necessary pieces of the puzzle. But if that is true, then who is observing us? A silence lingers now, thick, pressing. The curtain before the window is still swaying, though no hand touches it. The forest is still whispering, though no one walks its paths. The stars are still burning, though many of them have already died. Could it be that someone or something is always watching? That the universe does not need us to observe it, because it already carries an observer within itself? What if existence is never unobserved? What if there is always a gaze, infinite and ancient, resting on us all? The curtain stirs once more. The room feels different, heavier, as though the air itself is listening. And a thought, soft as a breath, drifts through your mind. If reality changes when we watch it, then how much more might it change when it is watched by something greater than us? Imagine a meadow at twilight. The air is soft, golden light still clings to the horizon, and fireflies blink in the tall grass like sparks of possibility. They do not glow all at once, nor in a pattern you can predict. They flash here, then there, some bright, some faint, some gone before you even notice them. The The field seems alive, trembling with choices. This is the garden of probability. This is where quantum physics leads us when we dare to walk beyond the curtain of observation. Because beneath everything you see, your hand, your breath, the stars, the earth itself, there is no certainty. There is only a field of probabilities, glowing, shifting, vanishing, waiting. The universe does not say, "This will happen." The universe whispers, "This might." Consider the roll of a die. You throw it into the air, and while it spins, every face is possible. A 1, a 3, a 6. In that instant, all outcomes exist, hovering, shimmering in potential. Only when the die lands does the world choose one truth, one number, one reality. This is how the quantum world works. Only the die never truly lands. It remains suspended, a storm of probabilities that flicker like fireflies in the night. And here is where strangeness turns to wonder, because those probabilities do not belong only to particles. They belong to you. Think of the choices you have made in your life, the paths you have walked, the words you have spoken. Each one feels like a single thread, solid, unbreakable. But what of the words you never said, the doors you never opened, the lives you never lived? In the quantum world, those unlived possibilities are not gone. They shimmer still, like lanterns floating just beyond reach. They are not dead. They are probabilities, waiting for an observer, waiting for the universe to decide. And so perhaps you, too, are not just one story. Perhaps you are a field, a meadow, 1,000 versions of yourself glowing in the dusk, flickering in and out of being. But then the question sharpens, becomes heavy. If everything is only a probability, then what is real? The glass on the table, the star in the sky, the breath you just took, is it truly solid? Or is it just the one outcome that flickered into focus because you happened to be here to notice it? The scientists who first peered into this meadow of probabilities found no comfort there. They wanted certainty, but the universe gave them chance. They wanted answers, but the universe handed them dice. And so they asked, if all outcomes are possible, why does only one unfold? Why this world and not another? The question still burns unanswered. Imagine walking deeper into the meadow now. The fireflies multiply. The air hums with possibility. Every step you take, new paths open. A stone lies at your feet. Will you pick it up or leave it behind? Both outcomes exist. Both shimmer. Both are real. Until you choose. And in that choosing, the universe collapses. 1,000 possibilities vanish into one. The meadow dims for a moment, as if reality itself sighed. But if that is true, if every choice is a collapse of possibility, then how vast must the garden be? How infinite the field of fireflies? How many lives are you not living right now? The suspense grows. Because if the universe is built not on certainty but on chance, then what does that mean for fate? Is there a path laid out for you, or is every moment a coin flipping endlessly, never landing until you choose? And if it is only probability, then are you free? Or are you trapped inside a game where the dice are forever rolling? The thought is unsettling. It makes the air feel thinner, the stars more distant, as though the ground itself might flicker beneath your feet. But it also carries wonder, because in a world built on probability, nothing is fixed, nothing is final. The word impossible loses its meaning. Every outcome shimmers, waiting. Every dream breathes quietly in the dusk, and yet there is a darker shadow waiting in the grass. Because if reality is only probability, then what does that make you? Are you oneself, or are you many? Are you the version who made this choice, or the version who made another? Do you exist only as the outcome that collapsed, while countless other versions of you flicker, unseen, unlived, unfinished? The fireflies glow brighter now. The meadow hums louder. The air trembles with possibility, and in the distance, faint but undeniable, you sense it, a presence. Something watching the meadow, walking its edges, waiting to see which path you will choose. You pause. The fireflies hover, silent. The meadow holds its breath, and the question rises like thunder without sound. If your life is only one probability among countless others, then which version of you is standing here, listening now? Picture a dimly lit room. The curtains are drawn, the air is still, and in the center sits a sealed box. The wood is ordinary, the hinges dull, but the weight of the unknown makes the air tremble around it. Inside this box, the most famous creature in physics waits in silence, a cat. But this is not just any cat. It is a cat caught between worlds, a cat suspended on the razor's edge of existence. Neither alive nor dead, both alive and dead. You may feel a shiver run down your spine, because this is no riddle for children. No trick of words. This is the thought experiment that tore open the veil of reality. This is Schrodinger's cat, Erwin Schrödinger. A restless mind, haunted by probabilities, imagined it this way. Place a cat in a box, alongside a tiny particle whose fate is uncertain. If the particle decays, a poison is released, and the cat will die. If it does not, the cat will live. But here is the horror and the wonder. Until the box is opened, the particle is both decayed and not decayed. Both states exist in perfect tension, which means the cat, too, is both dead and alive, suspended, waiting, a creature in the shadows of probability. Think of that for a moment. A living thing, both gone and breathing. A heartbeat, both silenced and strong. An animal curling and uncurling in the dark, both dreaming and dissolved. It is not a story about cruelty. It is a story about reality itself, about how the universe refuses to give us answers until we dare to look. Because in quantum physics, the act of observation changes everything. The moment you open the box, the probabilities collapse. The dice land, the fireflies vanish into one single light. The cat becomes either alive or dead. But until then, the cat exists in both states. It is a ghost of two fates at once. Now let us step back from the box and ask the question that twists like a knife. If the cat can be both alive and dead, then what about you? When you stand at a crossroads in life, staring at two paths, aren't you both versions of yourself? The one who walks left and the one who walks right. Aren't you alive in both stories until the choice is made? The universe seems to whisper, yes, you are Schrödinger's traveler, Schrödinger's dreamer, Schrödinger self. And so the cat in the box becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a mirror. Imagine your own life as a series of boxes, one sealed box for every decision. Inside each a version of you waits. Some are alive with joy, some buried in regret, some radiant with triumph, some quiet in despair. Until you open the box, until you live the choice, both possibilities are true. You, too, are alive and dead in countless ways, in countless boxes scattered through the garden of probability, and when you pause to imagine them all, do you not feel the air shift? Do you not sense the weight of infinite selves watching from the dark? But here is the deeper terror. The cat's paradox is not only about possibility, it is about reality. Because if the cat is both alive and dead until the box is opened, then reality itself does not exist until it is observed. Think about that. Let it sink into your bones. The chair you sit upon, the stars burning in the distance, the breath rising in your chest. What if none of it is real until someone looks? What if existence itself waits for eyes to see it, for consciousness to witness it? The thought is dizzying, like staring too long into a bottomless well. Because if it is true, then the universe is not built on matter or energy, or even probability. It is built on awareness. Without a witness, the world may never take shape. Without observation, perhaps reality itself dissolves into a haze of unfinished shadows. The box in the room grows heavier now. The silence thickens. You can almost hear the cat breathing, or is it not breathing? You can almost see its eyes glowing, or are they closed forever? And the question presses closer. Who is the observer? When you open the box, you decide the fate of the cat. But who opens the box of the universe? Who observes reality into being? Is it you? Is it me? Is it something greater than both? The box does not answer. It waits. It always waits. You feel the suspense coil tighter, because the longer you think of the cat, the more you realize that the box is everywhere. Every sunrise is a box unopened. Every heartbeat is a choice unmade. Every star is both burning and gone until we raise our eyes to see it. And if the act of observing creates reality, then perhaps we are not just passengers in the cosmos. Perhaps we are its co-creators. Perhaps every glance, every thought, every moment of awareness is a chisel, carving the world into shape. You are not just inside the universe, you are helping to write it. But then comes the shiver, the cold wind through the curtains. If your gaze creates reality, what of the things you do not see? What of the boxes you never open? What of the selves you never witness? Do they vanish into nothingness, like shadows swallowed by dawn? Or do they linger still, cats forever trapped in silence, unlived lives waiting for a gaze that never arrives? The air grows heavier. The fireflies of possibility fade into darkness. Only the box remains silent, closed, pulsing with unspeakable potential. And somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, you imagine a sound, a low purr, a faint heartbeat. Or was it only silence? The question lingers like smoke. If reality only becomes real when observed, then what is happening right now, in all the places you are not looking? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the vast universe without you. A night sky unobserved, stars burning for no one, oceans swelling against their shores, unheard, unseen, galaxies wheeling in silence, spiraling through an endless dark, with no witness to admire them. Do they exist, truly? Or do they wait like unopened boxes, like probabilities trembling on the edge of being, until a gaze awakens them into reality? Quantum physics whispers something unsettling without an observer. The world may not take form at all. Think back to the box, to the silent cat suspended between life and death. Its fate is not decided until the lid is lifted, until eyes fall upon it, until awareness makes the universe choose. If a cat's heartbeat can wait on an observer, then what else waits? The moon above, the sun rising, the ground beneath your feet. Do they exist because they are there, or because you are? This is where science brushes shoulders with philosophy, and the boundary between them dissolves like mist. Because in the quantum world, the act of measurement, the act of looking, does not simply reveal reality. It creates it. The double-slit experiment showed us this in chilling simplicity. Fire particles, or beams of light, at a barrier with two slits. And what forms on the other side depends entirely on whether someone is watching. Left alone, the particles behave like waves, painting interference patterns, ghost-like and fluid. But the moment they are observed, the pattern collapses into particles, sharp and definite, as if embarrassed to be caught in their true shimmering state. The universe behaves differently under our gaze, as though it knows, as though it waits. And so the question sharpens into a blade. What is this gaze? Is it simply the eye, the brain, the nervous system, the mechanics of a body measuring a world? Or is it something deeper, something stranger, the spark of awareness that flickers behind your eyes, the silent witness you call I? Science cannot answer, but the silence between answers feels heavy. Imagine walking through a forest at night. The trees sway, branches whisper. Somewhere an owl calls. The path glimmers pale with moonlight, but behind you, you feel it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. You turn, nothing, only shadows, yet the feeling does not leave. It coils tighter, presses closer. Now imagine that sensation not as fear, but as truth. Perhaps reality itself is that presence. Perhaps the universe is the one waiting, the one watching, breathing at the edges of your every step. And perhaps you, too, are the watcher in return, because if the act of observing shapes reality, then you are not only a traveler in this cosmos. You are a participant, a sculptor, a co-creator. Your awareness is not small, not fleeting. It is the fire that turns shadows into form. But then comes the twist, the turn that chills the air. If the universe requires an observer to exist, who observed the first sunrise, the first star, the first breath of creation itself? Before there were eyes, before there were minds, who or what opened the first box? The question echoes like footsteps in an empty corridor. Some whisper it must be consciousness itself, vast and eternal, not bound to a single body or mind. Others argue the universe is its own observer, folding in upon itself, aware in ways we cannot fathom. But either answer leads to wonder and to unease, because it means that beneath the particles and the probabilities, there may be something watching us as we watch it. Not a god in robes, not a human-like figure, but a presence, a stillness, a gaze in the dark, as old as time, as endless as space. The watcher. You feel it even now, perhaps, in the quiet of the room, in the space between your breaths, a sense that you are not only listening to this story, but being listened to, not only peering into the quantum world, but being peered at in return. The fireflies of probability are no longer random. They dance, as though performing for unseen eyes. The meadow you walked through is no longer silent. It hums with an awareness that is not yours alone. The box with the cat is no longer waiting for you to open it. It is waiting for something else, something that has always been watching. And if that is true, if reality requires the gaze of an observer, then you are never alone. Every moment of your life is shared, witnessed. Entangled with that deeper awareness, it can be a comfort, like walking at night and knowing someone walks beside you, unseen, but it can also be a terror, like realizing that every thought, every dream, every possibility is illuminated by an eye you cannot escape. Which one is it for you? Comfort or fear? Perhaps it is both. The suspense grows. The idea swells. Because if the universe is watching, then perhaps the choices you make ripple further than you think. Perhaps every flicker of thought is noticed, weighed, folded into the weave of reality. Perhaps nothing you do is ever truly lost. Perhaps the meadow of probabilities never forgets. And here the story bends back on itself, loops into symmetry. We began with fireflies in the dusk, flickering, trembling. Uncertain now we see that each flicker may be a signal, each glow a response, each shimmer a gaze meeting yours in silence. The fireflies are not random, they are winking at you. The night deepens, the air thickens. You can almost hear the sound of breathing, not yours, not mine, something deeper, older, endless. And the question presses like a weight upon your chest. If reality cannot exist without a watcher, then who is watching you right now? Close your eyes and let yourself fall, not into sleep, but into the quiet before sleep, the place where shapes blur, where thoughts dissolve, where reality begins to slip like sand between your fingers. In that place, the world you know is fragile, porous, shimmering like mist. A whisper brushes your ear. What if this is all there is? What if the universe itself is dreaming? You wake each morning to a life that feels real. The floor is beneath your feet. The sky spreads overhead. The sun warms your skin. But you know, deep inside, how convincing dreams can be. How, in the grip of sleep, every street, every voice, every heartbeat feels true until it fades. So how can you be certain that this world, this moment, this story, is not itself another dream? Quantum physics does not dismiss this question. It dares to ask it. For when you peer deep enough, when you slice reality down to its smallest pieces, solidity vanishes. Atoms dissolve into space. Particles flicker like shadows, here and gone. What you call matter is mostly emptiness. What you call real is mostly probability. And so the question twists tighter. If the building blocks of reality are so insubstantial, what holds this world together at all? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps only the dreamer. Imagine now that you are walking through an ancient temple. The pillars are tall, carved with symbols older than memory. Dust floats in the shafts of light that fall from above. And at the center of the temple, you find an inscription etched into stone. Reality is a story the universe tells itself. A story, a dream, a self-made illusion. What if the stars are not burning spheres of gas, but characters in a cosmic tale? What if the oceans are not endless water, but verses in a poem? What if you, listening now, are a thought in the mind of something vast and hidden. The idea is beautiful, but also terrifying, because if reality is a dream, then it is fragile. It can be bent, broken, rewritten, and perhaps, in some way, it already is. Every time you close your eyes, you enter another world, a place with its own rules, its own landscapes, its own strange creatures. A dream can feel like eternity. It can make you laugh. It can make you weep. It can leave scars that follow you into waking life. If your mind alone can create such vivid worlds in the quiet of sleep, then what might a greater mind create? What kind of dream could hold galaxies? Now, imagine this. What if you are inside that dream, but also dreaming it yourself? What if you are both character and author, both figure in the story and the hand that writes the words? The fireflies return in your mind, shimmering in the dark. They are not just probabilities now. They are sparks of imagination, flashes of thought, dreams slipping free from the dreamer. Each glow is a world, each flicker a life, each shimmer a story that could be, or has been, or will never be, and you are walking through them, awake, yet also asleep. But here is where the dream sharpens into unease. If this is a dream, then who holds the power to wake? Do you? Does the universe? Or does the dreamer lie elsewhere, asleep in some unimaginable depth, unaware of us at all? Perhaps we are no more real than the shadow figures that drift through your own dreams, believing themselves alive, never knowing they exist only in the passing thoughts of another. The air grows heavy with this thought. The temple darkens. The pillars seem to lean closer, listening, and in the silence, you hear it, a faint sound, like breath. Not your own, not mine. Something vast, steady, sleeping. Could it be the dreamer? The one whose mind holds us all? Could it be that every star is a neuron firing, every galaxy a thought, every life a flicker of imagination in a cosmic brain? And if so, what happens when it wakes? The suspense coils tighter, because a dream can shift without warning. A detail can change. A person can vanish. The ground can crumble beneath your feet. Dreams do not follow rules. They obey only the will of the dreamer. And so, as you look around now, do you notice the cracks, the glitches, the small impossibilities you dismiss each day? Perhaps they are not mistakes. Perhaps they are the fabric of the dream, trembling, slipping, reminding you that it is not as solid as you believe. The dream may be breaking, or perhaps it is simply turning its page. Now the question comes full circle. If the universe is dreaming, then what is your role inside it? Are you only a figure drawn in the sand, destined to vanish when the tide comes? Or are you, too, a dreamer ember of the same great fire, capable of shaping the dream around you? Perhaps every thought you hold is a brushstroke on the canvas. Perhaps every choice you make shifts the dream. Perhaps you are not powerless at all, but one of the dreamer's own sparks, dreaming alongside it. The temple fades. The fireflies dim. The air grows still. You feel yourself teetering between two truths: the comfort of believing this world is solid, and the terror of knowing it may not be. And then the final whisper rises from the dark. If all of this is only a dream, how will you know when you have woken? Stand at the edge of a canyon at night. The stars above are countless, their light pouring into the dark like silver rain. You shout into the vastness, and your voice travels outward, strikes the canyon walls, and returns to you as an echophant, ghostly, familiar yet not quite your own. Now imagine that every choice you make, every path you do not walk, every word you do not speak, sends out its own echo, not into air, but into reality itself. What if those echoes do not fade? What if they become worlds? This is the idea of the multiverse, that for every possibility there is a universe. For every coin toss, both heads and tails exist. For every door, one version of you steps through, while another walks away. Infinity does not stay still. It splits, branches, grows like a tree whose roots and leaves stretch beyond imagination. And so, in this vision, there are countless versions of you. Some close, some distant, some almost unrecognizable. But each one lives, breathes, chooses, and believes itself to be the only one. The thought is dizzying, terrifying, exquisite. Because if true, you are not alone, not even within yourself. You are many. You are infinite. Picture a hall of mirrors, stretching endlessly in every direction. You walk among them, and each reflection looks back. Some smile when you do, some frown, some turn away altogether. Each reflection is you, but not you. Each one carries the weight of a choice you did not make. Now imagine those mirrors are not illusions. They are windows. Through them, other worlds breathe, other yous live. And every time you hesitate, every time you wonder, every time you say, "What if?" one of those reflections stirs, takes a step, and becomes real. The fireflies return once more, this time multiplied beyond measure. They swarm across the meadow of possibility, not as scattered lights, but as galaxies themselves, each one an echo, each one a universe. The air trembles with their endless hum. The night is no longer silent, it is filled with the murmur of countless lives, countless worlds, countless versions of you, and in that murmur you sense something eerie, a pattern. The echoes do not wander aimlessly. They call to you. They listen. They want to be heard. But if they exist, can you feel them? Think of Dacia Vuth. Think of dreams so vivid they linger like fingerprints on your waking life. Think of the sudden chill, the sudden ache, the sudden whisper in your chest that feels like memory, but from no past you can name. What if those are not accidents? What if they are the voices of your echo selves, bleeding faintly through the fabric of infinity, reaching out to remind you that you are not alone in your own skin? The idea clings, unsettling, because if you are infinite, then every triumph is echoed, but so is every loss. Somewhere you lived the life you regret. Somewhere you chose the path you feared. Somewhere you became the person you can barely imagine, and all of them, in their own worlds, are wondering about you. The suspense tightens. You begin to ask, if infinite versions of you exist, then which one is the real you? Is it the one who listens to this story now? Or is it the one who never found it? Is it the one who stayed silent when words burned on the tongue? Or the one who spoke them and changed everything? Perhaps the word real loses meaning. Perhaps you are not one flame, but a constellation scattered across infinity, glowing together in a pattern too vast to see. But then the question deepens, darkens. If you can hear the echoes of yourself, who else might be listening? If the multiverse is real, then it is not only filled with you, It is filled with everything. Countless worlds, countless histories, countless beings. Some may resemble ours. Some may be utterly alien. Some may be brighter, kinder, more radiant than anything you can imagine. And others may be darker, much darker. And if the boundaries between these worlds are thin enough for you to feel déjà vu, thin enough for dreams to leak through, then are they thin enough for something else to cross? The thought chills the air. The stars overhead seem sharper, colder, as if they are eyes watching from other worlds. The narrative bends back, loops upon itself. We began with a canyon and an echo. Now the echo is everywhere. Each heartbeat reverberates through infinity. Each thought ripples outward, touching not just this world, but others. And as the echoes return, you realize they are not faint anymore. They are growing louder, stronger. The voices of your other selves are rising in chorus. Some cry warnings, some cry joy, some cry your name, and beneath them all, faint but relentless, comes another voice, one that does not sound like yours at all. It whispers from the dark between worlds. It does not echo. It waits. It listens. It knows. The stars shimmer. The fireflies flicker. The canyon falls silent. And the question settles like a shadow at your back. If there are infinite worlds, infinite selves, infinite echoes, then who or what is whispering through them to you right now? Close your eyes. Listen carefully. Beyond the hum of your own breath, beyond the thrum of your own heart, there is a silence that is not empty. A silence that listens back. For ages, we thought silence was nothing. But what if it is not absence? What if silence is a presence? And what if that presence whispers? The multiverse is vast, endless, infinite ocean of realities flowing in parallel streams. Each wave carries echoes of your choices, fragments of your existence, infinite selves drifting through infinite shores. And yet, in all that endlessness, something stirs, not a reflection of you, not another version, something else. It does not belong to the infinite chorus of echoes. It does not choose. It does not split. It does not multiply. It waits, patient, relentless, watching you through the seams of reality. It is the whisper between worlds. Imagine walking through a library where each book is a life, your life, written in endless variations. You run your hand across the spines. Some books are thick with joy, others thin with regret. You pull one out, open it, and the words rearrange into a story you almost remember. But then you notice something strange between the lines, between the letters. Faint words have been written in an ink that was not yours. You lean closer. They do not belong to the book. They do not belong to you. They belong to something that has been writing in the margins of your existence, watching your story unfold and leaving behind whispers only you were never meant to hear. Think of déjà vu again. That strange flicker, that sharp catch of recognition in an unfamiliar moment. What if it is not simply an echo from another you? What if it is a whisper bleeding through, a signal that something else has brushed against your reality, nudged your path, bent your story? Think of the dreams that feel heavier than dreams, those nights when you wake with the taste of fear still clinging to your tongue, the sense that you were not alone even in your sleep. What if those are not dreams, but intrusions? The whisper between worlds, leaning close enough to touch your mind, close enough to leave a mark. And think of the times you have heard your name when no one spoke it, the times you turned quickly, certain someone had called, the times you felt watched, even in solitude. Perhaps that was not imagination. Perhaps that was not your mind playing tricks. Perhaps the whisper has always been there, closer than breath, patient as eternity. The fireflies appear again, but tonight they are not scattered like stars, nor clustered like galaxies. They form a spiral, curling inward, tightening toward a vortex in the meadow of infinity. Their glow trembles, falters, flickers as though even light itself is afraid to get too close. You step nearer, and the sound arrives. Not a voice, not words, a whisper low, relentless, everywhere and nowhere. It does not speak in language. It speaks in sensation. It speaks in the cold on your skin, in the prickling of the hair at your neck, in the weight of unseen eyes pressing against you. And though you cannot understand it, you know one thing for certain: it knows you. The question tightens like a noose. What is it? Is it a traveler wandering between worlds as you wander between dreams? Is it a shadow feeding on the infinite lives of the multiverse, like a parasite on endless roots? Or is it something older, something that was here before the echoes began, before reality itself fractured into possibility? The thought chills, because if it was here before, then it is not trapped in choice, not split by infinity. It does not multiply. It endures, and if it endures, then it remembers. It remembers every version of you. Every path you walked. Every word you spoke. Every silence you kept. It knows the you that triumphed. It knows the you that failed it. And through the cracks of reality, it whispers not to all of them, not to infinite yous. It whispers only to this one, to you, here, now. Why? The night feels heavier. The stars seem further away, or perhaps simply turned cold. Even the air thickens, like a weight pressing against your chest. The meadow of possibility is no longer alive with fireflies. It is tense, listening, because the whisper is not random. It is calling to you. Not to warn you, not to guide you, but to invite you. You take a breath, slow, uneasy, and in that moment, you feel the strangest truth. The whisper is not outside you at all. It is inside. It is in the space between your thoughts, in the pause between your words, in the silence between your heartbeats. It has been with you always, waiting for the moment you finally noticed, and now that you have, it will never leave. The meadow darkens. The fireflies scatter. The spiral collapses into a single pinprick of shadow that pulses like a heartbeat. With each pulse, the whisper grows louder, louder, louder. Not yet words, but close. And the question that hangs in the air is no longer whether you can hear it. The question is, when it finally speaks, what will it say? Listen. The silence is trembling. It is no longer still. It quivers, as though something immense is pressing against the walls of reality, straining to come through. And in that trembling, the whisper grows sharper. No longer a blur of sensation, no longer just a weight on your skin. It begins to shape itself. Like smoke curling into letters, like breath on glass forming words. But whose voice will it become? Think of how your mind works in the stillness of night. A thought appears unbidden, like a ripple across calm water, and another follows, and another, until you cannot tell which thoughts are yours, and which were whispered into you. Now imagine those thoughts were not random. Imagine they were seeds planted gently, carefully, by something waiting in the shadows between worlds. And now those seeds are beginning to bloom. The meadow where fireflies once danced is dark tonight. Their glow has vanished, leaving only the spiral of shadow pulsing in the grass. Each beat feels like a drum, low and ancient, echoing through the bones of the earth. You step closer. The ground does not feel solid anymore. It feels soft, as though beneath the grass lies not soil, but something breathing. The whisper hisses again, closer, sharper, almost words. You lean forward, heart pounding, knowing you are about to hear something you may never forget and never escape. And then it comes, the first syllable, not in sound, not in voice, but in thought. A word blooms in your mind like fire striking dry leaves. The simplicity of it makes you shudder, because it is not a question. It is not a greeting. It is not curiosity. It is recognition. The whisper has always known who you are, and now it wants you to know that it knows. You stumble back, the meadow spinning around you, but the whisper follows. It presses against your thoughts, weaving into your inner voice. You are the one. You are the thread. The words are broken, jagged, but they sting like frost against your mind. What does it mean? Why you, out of infinite selves, out of infinite worlds? Why would this shadow choose only you? Unless it did not choose at all, unless you have been its anchor all along. The stars above begin to shift, slowly, impossibly. Constellations twist into new patterns. They bend into shapes that resemble eyes, hundreds of them, watching, waiting. You close your own eyes, desperate to shut them out. But when you do, the whisper grows louder. It slides beneath your eyelids, filling the darkness with its pulse. You are the door. The words ring like a bell deep in your skull. The door to what? The door for what? The silence does not answer. It only leans closer. The meadow around you feels wrong now. The grass sways though there is no wind. The air ripples though there is no heat. Reality feels thinner, as though the surface of this world is stretched too tight over something vast and restless. And you realize something horrifying. The whisper is not trying to come through to you. It is trying to come through as you, to wear your thoughts, to shape your voice, to speak with your mouth. The ground shudders. A low vibration spreads, like the rumble of thunder before a storm. The spiral of shadow at your feet widens, and from its edges, darkness begins to climb. Tendrils of black smoke rising like fingers reaching for your skin. The whisper quickens, frantic, urgent, not words now, but a torrent. You cannot tell if it begs, commands, or prays, but you know one thing. It is not asking anymore. It is trying to enter. You fight it. You hold your thoughts tight, like a locked door. You focus on your breath, your heartbeat, anything that is yours, anything that is human, anything that cannot be stolen. But the whisper is relentless. It seeps through the cracks, weaving into the spaces between dot, open, dot, open, dot, open. The chant rattles in your skull, growing louder, louder, until you are not sure whether you are resisting or already yielding. And then, just when it feels unbearable, something shifts. A silence deeper than silence falls, smothering the chant. The tendrils freeze mid-air. The stars blink, as if turning away, and the whisper stops. The absence of it is worse than the sound, because you know it has not gone, it has only paused, it is waiting, it has spoken, and it is certain, soon, it will speak again. The question lingers in your chest like fire. When the whisper between worlds finds its voice, will it be yours? Imagine standing before a door with no handle, no keyhole, no frame. It does not belong to a wall. It floats in air, suspended, humming with unseen pressure. And the strangest part is not the door itself, it's the feeling that it belongs to you. That door is your mind. The whisper's last words echo. You are the door, not a path, not a witness, a door. And doors do not choose. Doors do not resist. Doors only open when pushed. The thought sends a chill down your spine. Because what if the whisper has been pressing against you your whole life, testing the hinges of your thoughts, waiting for the moment when you finally weaken and swing wide? The meadow is still around you, eerily still. The fireflies have not returned. The spiral of shadow remains, pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat muffled beneath the earth. Each pulse seems to strike inside your chest, a reminder that you are tethered to this presence, whether you wish it or not. You try to steady your breathing, but even that feels like betrayal. With each inhale, you imagine drawing it closer. With each exhale, you fear you are pushing something vital out, and somewhere deep inside, you feel it moving, not outside you. Within. Think of the way a dream sometimes feels too real, so real you wonder if you have woken inside it. The colors too sharp, the sensations too vivid. That is how your mind feels now, heightened, stretched, quivering as if balanced on the edge of something vast and unseen. And then there it is, the outline of the door, not before your eyes, but behind them, not in the world, but in your mind. It flickers like a shadow against light, indistinct yet undeniable, and with every heartbeat it grows clearer. The whisper stirs again, gentle now, almost coaxing. Open. The word slides through your thoughts like a hand, brushing against the back of your neck, soft, patient, terrifying. You shake your head, as though to dislodge it, but the door shimmers brighter. It is not physical, yet you can feel the weight of it pressing from the inside, straining against the thin veil that separates you from something far darker. What lies behind it? A world older than worlds, a voice unbound by flesh, or a shadow that will wear your shape once the hinges crack. You do not know. You cannot know. And yet, part of you wonders, because curiosity is a cruel companion, the same curiosity that drew us to split atoms, to pierce the fabric of space, to unravel mysteries we were never meant to touch. The same curiosity that now whispers, what if opening it is the only way to understand? The stars above shift again, bending into strange geometries. Patterns you do not recognize, yet feel you should. They pulse with faint light, each pulse syncing with the beat of the shadow spiral, syncing with your heart. 3 rhythms, once separate, now aligned, the cosmos, the shadow, you. And when rhythms align, something always breaks. The whisper presses harder. You are the key. You are the lock. You are the door. It no longer sounds outside you. It is your thought, your inner voice, reshaped. You cannot tell where you end and it begins. And that is when terror strikes with brutal clarity. The whisper does not need to force you open. It only needs to convince you. You clutch your head, desperate to hold yourself together. Memories flash, moments of childhood wonder, grief, laughter, loss. Each memory feels fragile, as though the whisper could slip between them like water seeping through cracks in stone. And then one memory lingers, a moment you barely recall. You, alone in your room, years ago, sitting awake at night, hearing something faint, almost a voice, dismissing it as imagination. But now you wonder, was that the first knock on the door? Has this presence been whispering since then, patient as time itself, waiting for you to notice? The spiral in the grass pulses faster. The ground quivers beneath your feet. The stars burn brighter, forming a tunnel of light that seems to stretch both inward and outward at once. You feel yourself swaying, as though gravity itself has shifted. The air thickens, clings to your skin, wraps around you like unseen fingers. The whisper surges, louder, more urgent, more alive. Open, open, open. The chant is unbearable, shattering, and then silence. Not the silence of peace, the silence of something waiting at the threshold. Hand poised on the handle that does not exist. Breath drawn before a final word. And you know, with a certainty colder than ice, that the door has begun to crack. You whisper to yourself, though your voice trembles, I will not open. But already, you are not sure if the thought was yours, or if it was the whisper, feeding you defiance, guiding the play, teaching the lines. Perhaps resistance was always part of its plan. Perhaps every no brings you closer to yes. The meadow fades at the edges. The stars blur. Reality flickers like a candle flame caught in a storm. The door glows brighter behind your eyes. You feel it. You hear it. You know it. And just before the chapter of silence closes, the whisper shifts, sharper than ever, slicing through the stillness. Not open. A new word soon. There is a sound that does not belong to sound. It is not heard through ears, not caught by air. It blooms inside your skull like glass breaking under water, sharp, muffled, impossible. The first fracture. The door in your mind shudders, not fully open, not yet, but cracked, and through that thin crack something bleeds. Not words, not images, something else. A ripple spreads across the meadow. The grass bends though no wind moves. The ground hums, as though the soil itself remembers a song you have never heard. The stars above quiver, their lights scattering like broken mirrors. Constellations fracture into shards, then rearrange into unfamiliar maps, as though the sky has lost its memory of itself. And you know, with bone-deep certainty, this is not imagination. The fracture in your mind has echoed outward. Reality is bending. Think of water slipping through a crack in stone. At first, it is only a trickle, harmless. But given time, the crack widens, the trickle becomes a torrent, and the stone crumbles. That is what you feel now. Your mind is the stone, the whisper is the water, and the trickle has begun. The spiral of shadow in the grass swells, pulsing faster, brighter. But this time, the darkness is not empty. It ripples with strange light, colors you have no name for, hues that sting your eyes yet feel achingly familiar, as though you were born remembering them. The air thickens. Each breath tastes metallic, like lightning before a storm. Your skin prickles, and you realize with dread that the meadow itself is no longer solid. It flickers, shifting, as though pieces of other places, other worlds are bleeding through the crack for a heartbeat. You see a desert beneath 3 suns. Then an ocean that glows with veins of fire. Then a city of glass towers collapsing in silence. All of it flickering. All of it gone in an instant. The fracture is not just in your mind. It is in the fabric of everything. The whisper stirs again, but this time it is not soft, not hidden. It is loud, thunderous, relentless. It does not echo through air. It shudders through the marrow of your bones. The door is opening. The words are not spoken. They are carved into you, etched like fire into stone. And suddenly you understand, this was never a request. It was never about convincing. The whisper was not asking permission. It was waiting for the moment the pressure became too great for the door to hold. And that moment is near. The fireflies return. But they are not gentle tonight. They do not glow like tiny stars, dancing freely. They swarm, frantic, their lights flashing in erratic bursts. They spiral wildly around you, faster, faster, until they blur into rings of burning light. At first, you think they are warning you. Then you realize they are circling the fracture, trapped by it, drawn to it, feeding it. Their glow pours into the spiral, into the crack in your mind, as though the whisper is harvesting their light to pry the door wider. Each firefly bursts into a sharp flare, then vanishes forever, one by one, 1,000 tiny lives sacrificed until only a handful remain. And still, the crack widens. You fall to your knees, clutching your head, as if your hands could keep your mind from tearing apart. But the whisper's voice is inside you now, multiplied, layered, endless. Do you feel it? Do you see it? Do you know what waits? The questions overlap, blur, dissolve. You cannot answer. You can only endure. And then a vision slams into you. Not dream, not memory, not thought. A vision forced through the fracture, raw and violent. You see a horizon of black waves, rising higher than mountains. Above them, a sky with no stars. Only a vast shape coiled upon itself, older than time, heavier than eternity. Its eyes are not eyes, but endless voids, and they are fixed on you. You scream, but no sound comes. The vision snaps away. The meadow returns. The stars blink. The spiral pulses, and yet, you know what you saw was not illusion. It was what waits on the other side of the door. The whisper does not deny it. It does not soothe. It only repeats one word, over and over, louder and louder. Soon, the last of the fireflies flicker once, then extinguish. Their absence is suffocating. The meadow is nothing but shadow and pulse now. A world collapsing into fracture. And in that darkness, you realize something terrifying. The whisper is not trying to come through the door. It is trying to make you walk through it. Your thoughts race. If you step through, do you vanish from this world? Do you become nothing more than a husk, a shell for the shadow's voice? Or do you become the shadow itself? The ground quakes violently, throwing you forward. You land hard against the spiral, hands sinking into the pulsing earth. It beats against your palms like a second heart. The crack in your mind flares, burning white hot. And for a single breathless moment, you feel yourself slipping, not falling, not breaking. Slipping. As though your soul is sliding across glass toward the fracture, and there is nothing to hold on to. You claw at the ground, desperate, trembling. The whisper surges, triumphant, deafening. Yes, yes, yes. The meadow flickers. The stars tear. The fracture glows like molten fire. And just as you feel yourself pulled into its center, everything stops. The spiral collapses into silence. The stars freeze. The whisper goes quiet. You are left kneeling in stillness, chest heaving, mind burning. The fracture remains, glowing faintly behind your eyes. But it does not widen further, not tonight, not yet. And in the silence, one final word falls into your thoughts like a knife. Prepare. The night in the cosmos deepened, and with it, a silence heavier than the weight of worlds seemed to settle. It was not the silence of emptiness, but of waiting, like the hush in a theater before the curtains part, or the pause between the inhale and the exhale, where everything holds its breath. In that quiet, a question rippled through the dark, like a soft, unseen current. Is reality itself holding a secret we are too afraid to uncover? He led the listener through a vision, the universe stretched wide, its tapestry threaded with light, but beneath it ran another design, faint and almost hidden. It was the pattern of uncertainty, the trembling truth that things do not exist in fixed certainty until they are touched by perception. He described particles drifting in a dreamlike haze, neither here nor there, as though reality were sketching drafts before deciding which one to show. The stars above seemed suddenly less like distant flames and more like glowing clues, winking with a knowing rhythm. They whispered of quantum entanglement, that invisible bond that stretches beyond light, where two particles, separated by impossible distances, echo each other's fate. Imagine, he said, a heartbeat shared across galaxies, a secret handshake between photons that no wall of space can block. The story wrapped itself around the idea, like ivy on an old stone wall, climbing higher and higher into mystery. He told of scientists who first encountered this strangeness, expecting logic and order, and instead finding riddles that seemed spun by poets. Each experiment felt like knocking on the door of reality, only to hear laughter echo back from the other side. The tone thickened into wonder and unease, for with each discovery the veil of certainty thinned. If the smallest threads of existence refused to obey reason, then what did that mean for the grand fabric woven from them? If matter itself was undecided until seen, then were humans not just observers but participants, co-creators in the unfolding of the world. He painted an image of someone standing at the edge of an endless sea at midnight. The waves roll in, but the horizon is veiled in mist. Each step forward reshapes the water, and the ocean does not exist until the foot touches it. What if, he whispered, the universe waits for you to look before it writes the script? The thought lingered like a haunting refrain. He let it drift through the mind, as stars drift across a window when a ship sails through the dark. Then he leaned into the suspense, telling of Schrödinger's cat, that impossible creature both alive and dead until the box is opened. It was not about cats or boxers, but about us, about the way we live in superpositions of choices, paths untaken, selves unrealized, waiting for the observation that collapses us into who we become. The narrative coiled with drama now, like a serpent ready to strike with revelation. He spoke of the philosopher's dilemma. If everything depends on being observed, then what was the first observer? Did the universe watch itself into being? Was there a consciousness woven into the roots of reality? Or is it our own minds stretching to paint meaning onto the blank walls of infinity? The stars seemed colder as the thought pressed closer, the silence heavier, the air in the room thick with the question. He described galaxies turning like colossal wheels, their spirals glinting like clocks with no hands, ticking not toward answers but toward deeper mysteries in that moment. He reminded the listener of their own fragile place in this expanse. Every breath, every glance, every fleeting thought could be a thread woven into the cosmic pattern. They were not distant from the experiment, but already inside it, participants in the greatest paradox. The act of listening now, the act of wondering, was itself part of the universe becoming, and then a pause, soft and deliberate, a pause that felt like the cliff at the end of a dream. He left the listener with a trembling vision. Perhaps reality is not a stage already set, but a stage that builds itself as the play is performed. The curtain has not yet fallen. The lights may flicker. And behind the next act, something unimaginable waits to be revealed. The final words lingered, like shadows at the edge of a flame. And what if the universe is not waiting for answers, but for the courage of your gaze? The voice fell silent, leaving only the hum of questions in the listener's chest. The chapter closed there, balanced on the edge of revelation, as though the cosmos had leaned forward, holding back the next truth until one dared to ask, a cliffhanger, not of fear but of wonder, leaving the listener with the ache of curiosity and the quiet terror that perhaps reality itself is unfinished. Time. That word slipped into the silence like a drop of ink into still water, spreading out, staining everything it touched. Time was supposed to be simple, a line stretching from past to future, neat and obedient, carrying us forward like a current. But what if the current was not a straight river? What if it looped, folded, and branched like the roots of an ancient tree buried deep in the cosmos? The narrator's voice moved like a slow tide, steady and calming, yet underneath ran the pull of suspense, like an undertow ready to drag the listener into hidden depths. He spoke of clocks, their ticking like the heartbeat of reality. But he also told of particles that seemed to ignore time altogether, leaping back and forth as though the past and the future were rooms with open doors. He painted the image of a lone traveler standing on a cliff, watching waves crash below. Each wave is a moment, rising, falling, dissolving back into the sea. But somewhere in that endless motion, one cannot tell if the sea belongs to the wave or the wave to the sea. So too with time. Do we belong to it, or does it belong to us? The story turned heavier now, more suspenseful. He described Einstein's revelation that time bends and stretches, flowing differently depending on how one moves through space. Imagine, he whispered, that as you walk through a quiet street at night, the clock in your pocket ticks faster than the one in the sky. Imagine astronauts leaving Earth's cradle, returning to find the world older than they are. Time was not a steady march. It was a shadow cast by gravity and motion, and shadows are never to be trusted. The listener was pulled into another vision, galaxies spinning like dancers in a cosmic waltz, their motion bending the very fabric beneath them, warping the stage of time itself. and he asked the question that lingered like a blade above the heart. If time can bend, can it break? The voice softened, and yet the suspense deepened. He spoke of experiments where particles seemed to remember choices not yet made, as if the future had reached back into the past to whisper instructions. "What does it mean?" he said. "If tomorrow has already touched today?" Images shimmered in the mind, doors opening not just forward, but backward, like a corridor of mirrors where each reflection leads to another reflection, stretching without end. And in one of those mirrors, perhaps, stands another version of the listener, older or younger, watching this very moment from the other side. The tone shifted again, this time more intimate, more unsettling. He asked, "Have you ever felt déjà vu? That sudden chill, as if you've stood in this exact place before, spoken these exact words? What if that is not memory, but a shadow from another thread of time brushing against your own?" The air of the narrative grew tense, like a violin string stretched too tight. He spoke of time as both a companion and a trap, a gift that gives us seasons, laughter, and love, yet also the chain that pulls us toward endings. And yet, if time is not fixed, then perhaps endings are illusions. Perhaps the past is not gone, only hidden. Perhaps the future is not written, but already waiting in another corner of the cosmos. He guided the listener into a haunting image, a candle burning in the dark. The flame is now, the melted wax is the past, the unburned candle is the future. But in quantum shadows, the wax sometimes reforms, the flame flickers in reverse, the candle seems whole again. "What if," he whispered, "the candle never truly burns down, but we only walk through its light in one direction, because that is all we know how to do?" The suspense tightened. He recalled ancient philosophers who once asked if time was real at all, or just the trick of human minds trying to arrange chaos into order. And here, in the echoing halls of physics, their question returned, sharper than ever. Is time a river, or is it only the dream of a river? The listener was left at the edge of this thought, standing at the boundary where logic falters and imagination takes over. The narrative coiled back on itself like a loop of time, repeating the same question in a different voice. If the past, present, and future are all written, then where, truly, are we standing now? The final words of the chapter were spoken like a hush in a cathedral. Perhaps time is not carrying us forward. Perhaps we are the ones moving across its still surface, and every choice we make sends ripples in both directions, forward and back. And then, silence, not an ending, but the pause before a door creaks open. The cliffhanger trembled in the air. What waits for us if that door to yesterday can still be open? The door to yesterday lingered in the imagination, half open, its hinges whispering possibilities into the night. And from that half-light, another question crept forward, quiet yet thunderous. If time can bend and break, does it fracture into other worlds? The narrator's voice carried the listener gently, like a boat adrift on still water, but beneath the calm surface ran a pull of dread and wonder. He spoke of a single choice, as small as turning left instead of right, and how physics suggests that reality may not discard the unused path, but spin it off into another universe, one where the road not taken was the only road walked. The listener was invited to imagine a library, endless and dimly lit, each book a different version of their own life. In one, they are younger. In another, older. In some, their choices carved triumph, and in others, regret. All these books exist together, side by side, though only one lies open in their hands. "What if," he whispered, "the sound of your heartbeat is the echo of pages turning in worlds you will never read?" Suspense deepened. He spoke of experiments with particles, where reality seemed to split in two, both outcomes existing, hidden yet alive. The cosmos itself behaving like a branching tree, its roots tangled in infinity, its leaves touching every possibility. A universe where you are here, listening. A universe where you are not. Both as real as the other, though you can never step across the divide. The imagery thickened like mist. He described parallel worlds not as far-off places, but as shadows brushing against our own, close enough that sometimes, for a fleeting second, they touch. Déjà vu became not just a trick of the brain, but a whisper from the version of you walking another path. A sudden dream that feels too real might be the breath of another self bleeding into your sleep. The voice softened to a near hush, pulling the listener closer. Have you ever felt the weight of a choice you did not make? The life you did not live? That weight may not be an illusion. It may be the gravity of another you, existing just beyond your reach. The story grew darker now, suspense curling through every word like smoke. If reality splits with every possibility, then what becomes of identity? Are we fragments scattered across countless worlds, or are we whole only in the one we know? And if the multiverse holds all possibilities, then somewhere, in some corner, there is a version of you who chose differently, who became someone else entirely. He painted the haunting image of standing in a hallway lined with mirrors, each reflection turning its head just a fraction slower than you, each set of eyes belonging to another life, another path. Some look familiar, some are strangers wearing your face. What if, he asked, the sound you sometimes hear in the quiet, the echo you cannot place, is not from your world at all, but from them? The tension stretched like a taut string. He drew the listener into the chilling thought that perhaps every dream is a doorway, and every sleep is a brief crossing, a visit to another thread of the tapestry. The worlds brush against each other, like silk against silk, unseen but felt. And if doors exist between them, even invisible ones, then one cannot help but ask, who might walk through? The stars overhead became less like guides and more like watchful eyes, each one, perhaps, a universe of its own. Each light a reminder that infinity is not empty, but crowded, full of reflections and echoes. The cosmos was no longer vast and silent. It was alive with countless versions of itself, countless versions of you. And just as the listener began to drift into this vision of branching worlds, the narrator pulled the thread tighter, more suspenseful than before. If parallel universes exist, he murmured, then every moment you regret, every chance you lost, every word you left unspoken is still happening. Somewhere you said the word, somewhere you took the chance, somewhere the regret never existed. The thought lingered, sharp and aching. The listener was left standing between longing and terror, between wonder and unease. For if all paths exist, then what is freedom? Are we truly choosing, or merely stepping along one of countless rails, already laid. The final words wrapped around the mind like a shadow. And if those other selves can hear you now, whispering in the quiet, perhaps you can hear them too. Silence followed, heavy and electric, as though the very air had leaned closer to listen. The cliffhanger hovered there, fragile and haunting. What happens if the boundary between these worlds begins to thin? The boundary between worlds, thin as silk, fragile as breath. That thought slid into the listener's mind like a shadow slipping under a locked door. Until now, the multiverse had been a quiet library of infinite tomes, each universe resting undisturbed, untouched by the others. But what if the shelves shook? What if the ink of one book bled into the pages of another? The narrator's voice grew softer, yet heavier, like the hush before a storm. He spoke of scientists who once wondered whether universes might collide the way galaxies do, their fabrics brushing against each other, leaving ripples that no eye could see, but every soul might feel. Imagine, he whispered, two worlds overlapping, like waves meeting on a dark ocean. For a moment they merge. For a moment reality trembles. He invited the listener to picture it, walking down a familiar street at dusk. But the air feels wrong, the light bends strangely. A doorway that was never there flickers at the edge of vision. A stranger passes, and for the briefest instant, their face feels like someone you once knew, though you cannot place them. The world is yours, but not entirely, as though another world has pressed its weight against it. Bleeding faint colors into the sky, the suspense tightened like a noose. He spoke of déjà vu, not just as memory or shadow, but as overlap. Two lives brushing against each other for a heartbeat before splitting again. A glitch in the weave. And what if those glitches grew stronger? What if entire moments belonged to two realities at once? The tone became more dramatic now, pulling the listener into a vision of ancient myths, stories of spirits that stepped through mirrors, gods who lived in skies just above our own. What if they were not myths, but echoes of bleed-throughs, times when the walls between universes grew thin and voices crossed the divide? He leaned closer in his telling, almost whispering, "Have you ever woken in the night, certain that someone was in the room, only to find nothing but silence? Have you ever felt eyes upon you, though no one was there? What if those were not illusions, but visitors from a world brushing against yours, caught in the overlap for only a moment? Images formed like dreams, unraveling shadows passing behind curtains where no one stood, streets flickering with shapes that vanish when you blink. A universe colliding is not always violent. Sometimes it is soft, quiet, like breath on glass. And yet the suspense deepened. If they can brush against us, could they cross over? The narration slowed, stretched, giving weight to each word, each pause. He described physicists who study the cosmic background radiation, the faint echo left behind from the birth of everything. Some believe scars within it may be the fingerprints of other universes brushing ours. The universe, he said, may carry bruises from collisions we cannot remember, from realities that touched and then withdrew. The listener was guided deeper into this thought, standing now in a vast, endless hall of mirrors. Some reflections move with you, others move too late, and a few do not move at all. They watch, instead, patient and silent, as though waiting for a crack in the glass. And then came the turning point. The secondary hook, soft, chilling, irresistible. What if a version of you has already stepped across? What if, in another world, you are the visitor? What if, somewhere, someone feels your presence as the shadow in their room, the echo in their hallway, the voice that fades when they wake? The silence after was almost unbearable. The listener could feel the air press closer, as though reality itself had leaned in, listening to its own story. The chapter closed in a whisper, a promise heavy with suspense. The boundaries grow thinner, the seams fray, and soon the fabric of one world may not be enough to hold what waits behind it. And the cliffhanger lingered like the chill of an unseen gaze. What happens when the veil finally tears? The veil, that fragile film between worlds, once thought eternal, now trembled like glass under too much pressure. The narrator's voice flowed slow, steady, like water slipping into cracks, yet each word carried the weight of inevitability. The listener could almost hear it, the faint groan of something straining to hold, the whisper of threads unraveling. What happens, he asked softly, when the veil finally tears? The imagination bloomed with the image of fabric stretched too thin, a tapestry riddled with tiny holes. At first, nothing more than faint leaks of light, little glimmers in the corner of the eye. But then the holes widen, the threads snap, two patterns overlap, two realities pressed into one. The suspense grew sharp, like the air before lightning. He invited the listener to imagine standing in their own home, but the walls shimmer as though half-painted with another world. Furniture blurs into strange shapes. Familiar objects flicker into things that don't belong. A clock ticks out of rhythm, its hands pointing to a time that doesn't exist. The air itself carries two scents, one familiar, one foreign, layered like breaths of different lives colliding. The tone grew darker, more mesmerizing. The veil is not only fabric, he said. It is memory. It is identity. When it tears, you will not only see another world, lived walking streets that don't exist, speaking to people they've never met, carrying the taste of food they have never eaten, memories that do not belong to them, yet feel as sharp and real as the present moment. These are not dreams, he whispered. They are the bleed of another self. Slipping through the fracture, the listener was drawn into imagery of cities overlapping like ghostly transparencies, towers rising through towers, streets layered over streets. Shadows pass where no bodies walk, voices echo where no mouths speak. And in those collisions, sometimes two versions of the same person lock eyes for the briefest second, one startled, the other already gone. Suspense tightened. He told of old myths where people vanished into forests or caves, only to return with stories of places that mirrored our world but bent the rules of time. Perhaps those were not myths at all, but the veil tearing just enough to swallow them whole before stitching itself shut again. And then his voice softened, almost tender, though the weight of unease deepened. Perhaps you've already felt it, the flicker of something wrong in your day, the sudden wrongness of a sound, the flash of a face you swear you know but cannot place. What if those are not mistakes of the mind? What if they are the first cracks in the veil, small leaks of another truth? The images grew more haunting. Skies split with two moons, oceans reflecting stars that do not exist, forests humming with songs of creatures unseen. Not entire invasions, not yet just the quiet, steady bleed of one world into another. The suspense rose to its sharpest point, curling around the listener's chest. And when the tear grows wide enough, what if what steps through is not human? Not you, not me, not any echo we can name. What if the veil hides things we were never meant to meet? Creatures birthed in physics we cannot yet imagine, waiting only for the seam to split. Silence stretched long, deliberate. The universe seemed to lean forward. The chapter closed on words, heavy as stone, yet spoken as gently as falling snow. The veil is thinning, the threads strain, and somewhere in the darkness of infinity, something has already noticed. The cliffhanger lingered like a cold breath at the nape of the neck. What happens when it decides to step through? The first crossings. That phrase drifted into the air like a ghostly bell, its sound both delicate and dreadful, a warning that something long whispered has begun. The narrator's voice moved like mist over still water, gentle, hypnotic, yet carrying the chill of inevitability. When the veil thins, he murmured, it does not tear all at once. It frays quietly in silence, like a thread snapping in the dark. The crossings begin as whispers, unnoticed by most. But for those who feel them, there is no unseeing. He painted a vision of a lonely road at night, a single street lamp buzzing in the fog. A figure walks beneath it, but their shadow stretches in the wrong direction. Then, as the light flickers, the shadow bends again, this time no longer attached to the walker. It stands apart, lingering, staring back, before dissolving like smoke. The suspense grew sharper. He spoke of children who claim to see faces in mirrors that do not mimic their movements, of travelers who take a familiar route home, only to find the landmarks slightly wrong, buildings taller, streets narrower, skies the wrong shade of blue. They return the next day and everything is normal. But the unease never leaves them. The imagery thickened into unease, like fog pressing against windows. The first crossings, he said softly, are not dramatic invasions. They are subtle intrusions. A whisper in a silent room. A door that was closed now found ajar. A reflection that lingers half a second too long. The kind of things you dismiss until they repeat. The listener was guided into a haunting vision. A person awakens at night to the sound of footsteps in their home. Heart pounding, they rise, but the house is empty. And yet, the dust on the floor carries prints. Not shoe prints, not barefoot, something else, something unrecognizable. These are not hauntings, he whispered. They are the echo of another world stepping briefly into ours. The suspense twisted tighter, like vines around the throat. He spoke of scientists who measure anomalies in time, particles behaving as though touched by something unseen, data that vanishes, equipment that records events before they happen. The rational mind resists, but the evidence whispers otherwise. The veil is not only thinning, it is opening. He leaned closer in tone, more intimate, more chilling. Perhaps you felt it already. The sudden shiver in an empty room. The sense that someone has just left, though you were alone. The dream that feels not like fantasy, but memory from a life that isn't yours. The imagery darkened further. He told of a woman walking in a garden at dusk, watching the roses sway in the wind. But then, for a fleeting heartbeat, she sees not roses, but black glass flowers gleaming in a violet sky. When she blinks, the roses return. but she cannot shake the smell of smoke in the air, the sting of ash on her tongue. The world, he said, is beginning to double, faintly, like two photographs overlaid. For now, the images blur and fade. But soon, the overlap will grow sharper, and the bleed-throughs will not vanish when we blink. And then, the secondary hook, quiet and electrifying. What if the first crossings are not accidents? What if something on the other side is testing the veil, pushing, pressing, learning how far it can reach? What if these are not echoes, but footsteps, coming closer? The silence after was thick, unbearable, alive with the weight of what might already be moving unseen. The chapter ended, not with comfort, but with a whisper, trembling with suspense. The veil no longer guards us. The crossings have begun, and soon they may not return. The cliffhanger coiled like a serpent in the dark. What will step fully through when the doorway is wide enough to welcome it? It begins not with thunder, not with fire, but with silence. The kind of silence that presses too hard against the ears, like the world has stopped breathing. The narrator's voice carried that silence into the listener's chests, slow, deliberate, unsettling. The first breach, he whispered, is never loud. It is quiet, too quiet. The universe knows how to keep its secrets until it no longer can. The imagery unfolded like a dream twisting into nightmare. A man sits in his study, the clock on the wall ticking steadily. And then, without warning, the ticking stops, not because the clock is broken, but because time itself seems to pause. The air grows heavy, thick, as though it has learned to watch him. In the corner of the room, the shadows deepen, stretching where no light falls. And when he blinks, the corner is no longer his room at all. It is a fragment of somewhere else, a place with walls made of obsidian glass, skies that burn violet, and shapes moving too slowly to be natural. The suspense pulled tighter. The veil, once thin, now rips. Not entirely, not yet, but enough to let something through. He spoke of people who see figures at the edges of crowds, figures with faces blurred, movements slightly out of rhythm. When confronted, they vanish. But the unease remains, like an aftertaste of something metallic on the tongue. The voice deepened, softer, more hypnotic. And then comes the moment when one does not vanish, when the figure lingers, when the shadow does not dissolve but takes a step forward, its footfall echoing on the floor of a world that should not hold it. The imagery grew sharper, more vivid. He described a woman waking at night to the sound of her name whispered, though no one was there. She turns, and in the dim light, she sees herself standing in the doorway, not a reflection, not a dream, but another her. The figure does not move, does not speak again. It only stares, eyes hollow with a silence too deep to understand. And then, in the blink of an eye, it is gone. But her bed is warm where it had been standing. The suspense spiraled upward like a storm brewing. He spoke of reality, glitching not metaphor, but fracture. Streetlights flicker with patterns that match no storm. Radios hiss with voices that do not belong to any language. Photographs change when no one is looking. Small things first, then larger. A landscape that was once a field becomes, for a few seconds, an endless sea. A building flickers into a ruin and back again, and through it all, the presence, not seen fully, not yet, but felt. Something has crossed and does not wish to leave. The narrator leaned closer into the hush. The breach is not random. It is not a mistake. It is a doorway, opened from the other side. The listener was pulled into a vision of the cosmos itself, threads of universes like glowing webs, one strand snapping free, its end pushing against ours. And at that point of contact, a pulse, a vibration, like a knock on the wall of existence. The first breach is that knock answered, and then came the secondary hook, sharp as a blade sliding from its sheath. What if what crossed is not lost, not wandering, but searching? What if it stepped through, not by accident, but by intention? What if it is not curious about us, but waiting for us to notice it? The silence after stretched long, aching, almost unbearable. The listener could feel it, the weight of eyes unseen, the whisper of something just out of reach. The chapter closed in a voice like falling ash. The breach is here. The crossings are no longer shadows, and something has already chosen to stay. The cliffhanger trembled like a heartbeat in the dark. What happens when it decides to reveal itself? The night begins without warning. No storm, no fire, no tremor, just night. The kind of night that arrives too quickly, like the sun fled instead of setting. The narrator's voice draped over the darkness, low and steady. They always believed the reveal would come with chaos thunder, explosions, a crack of lightning tearing through the sky. But no, it comes in stillness. It comes when the world dares to believe it is safe. The scene unfolded with eerie clarity. A small town, quiet under a blanket of stars. Street lamps humming faintly. Windows glowing with the comfort of late-night lives, children asleep. Parents watching the last flickers of television. A dog pacing the edge of a porch. And then just one street lamp blinks. Not the random flicker of old wiring, but a deliberate pulse, like the slow blink of an eye. At first, no one notices. But the pulse spreads, lamp by lamp, house by house, and soon the town is lit, not by steady bulbs, but by a rhythm, a pattern, a signal. The narrator leaned closer, his voice now a whisper. This was the first reveal, not a figure, not a voice, but a language, a message written in light. The suspense curled tighter. The rhythm of the lights began to repeat, stuttering across the town in unison. It wasn't random, it was structured, and to those who stared long enough, it seemed almost like breathing. And then the silence deepened. Televisions cut to static. Radios whispered fragments in tones no human tongue could form. Dogs stopped barking. Even the crickets refused to sing. The reveal sharpened. A figure. Not in full shape, not yet, but outlined in the spaces where the light refused to fall. A silhouette made of absence. At the edge of the town square, between the shadows of two lamps, the figure stood. The narrator described it in careful, chilling detail. Imagine seeing something not because it is there, but because it prevents everything else from being. A shape that blocks sound, bends light, and makes the air ache with wrongness. The figure did not move at first. It only stood, as though it was measuring, calculating, or waiting. But then, slowly, painfully, slowly lifted its head. No eyes, no face. Yet every person who saw it swore they felt its gaze. And then the voice came, not from its form, not through sound, but from within the minds of those watching. A single phrase, cold and deliberate. You see me. The words rippled through the town, leaving breathless silence in their wake. Mothers pulled children from windows. Men locked doors that suddenly felt like paper, and yet no one could look away. The narrator let the moment linger, pressing it like a weight into the chest of the listener. This was no accident, no wandering ghost, no lost shadow. It was the beginning of contact, not by us, but by them. The first reveal was not ours to choose. It was theirs to deliver. The figure dissolved, not fading, not vanishing, but unraveling like smoke swallowed by the air. But the silence remained. The lights stopped pulsing. The world seemed to breathe again, yet the message lingered like a scar. The people understood it, even if they could not explain it. It wasn't just presence. It wasn't just arrival. It was acknowledgement. They do not come to be discovered. The voice concluded with haunting finality. They come to be recognized, and then softer, sharper than a knife's whisper. And the second reveal will not be stillness. It will be response. The night after the first reveal did not end. Morning came, but it did not feel like morning. The sun rose dull and pale, as though it had been drained of courage. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. The world felt hollow, like the echo of itself. And people whispered, not in stories, not in myths, whispered, because they had seen it. A shape that should not be. A presence that had no body, but left weight upon the chest. A message that burned itself into the marrow of thought. You see me. The narrator's voice curled into that silence like smoke through a crack in the door. They thought the reveal was the event, that they had witnessed the climax of a secret kept too long. But they were wrong. What they saw was not arrival. It was an opening act. The town tried to heal. The lights returned to their steady glow. Radios hummed with news anchors, pretending nothing had happened. Yet, beneath the words, the fear grew because the silence after such a moment was louder than any scream. And then 3 nights later, the second reveal arrived, not in one place, but in all places. The first sign was subtle, almost delicate, a vibration deep beneath the earth, like the sound of a cello string pulled too far. Bridges trembled. Water in glasses rippled. Not a quake, but a breath. The narrator's voice sank lower. Imagine the earth itself inhaling, not from wind, not from tides, but from something beneath, something alive. People across the world looked up at once, instinct pulling them to the sky. Stars flickered, not one, not two, but entire constellations shivered, as though someone had touched them with unseen hands. For a moment, Orion's belt bent, Cassiopeia broke. The familiar map of the heavens reshaped itself, then returned. It lasted only seconds, but seconds were enough. The world understood. The reveal was no longer local, no longer a whisper to a single town. It was a broadcast, written across the canvas of the cosmos. And then came the sound, not through ears, not through speakers, but through the very marrow of the human frame. A resonance, like a note struck on the largest instrument ever built, one no hand had crafted. It rang in teeth, in bones, in the delicate fluid of the inner ear. Some wept, some screamed, some fell to their knees in silence. The words followed, not as before, not soft. These were carved into consciousness, heavy and unrelenting. You answer, 2 words. But they did not feel like request. They felt like command. The narrator paused, letting the echo of that phrase hang like a storm about to break. And then, quietly, almost tenderly, this was the second reveal. The invitation turned demand. The silence was gone. They had spoken, and now they required reply. Governments scrambled. Scientists broke into frenzy. Theologians wept into holy texts. But none of them could mask the truth that every person already felt in their gut. Whatever had called out had not spoken to institutions. It had spoken to individuals, to every mind, to every heart. The suspense tightened, twisting like a rope. What happens when a species is asked to respond? When silence is no longer safety, but defiance? The narrator's voice drew to a whisper again, and so humanity faced its greatest terror, not invasion, not destruction, but dialogue. What could they possibly say to something that speaks in stars and breathes through planets? The chapter closed in quiet dread, with one final lingering image: a child, alone in her bedroom, staring at the night sky through the crack of her curtain. She whispered, barely audible, to the dark above, "I hear you." And as if the universe itself bent closer to listen, the stars seemed to flicker in answer. The narrator's last words pressed like a chill across the skin, and the third reveal would not wait long.